It's time to get wild. It's time to get wood. Today we're reviewing the Wildwoods, the latest Frostgrave expansion by Joseph McCullough. The Wildwoods is a 96-page book dedicated to providing the Frostgrave players with the tools they need to take their campaigns out of the city and into more natural settings. The production, as always, is very high. All of the Frostgrave books are filled with wonderful fantasy art and are well organized. The $30 price tag, however, is a little upsetting. I feel like these books were about $20 not that long ago. That makes them more expensive than most D&D 5e books on Amazon right now. For example, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything is a larger book, twice as many pages, and even smaller text. I like Osprey Press, and I think you should support them, but one of the reasons I like them is that they were very competitively priced. I hope they continue to be so, but I doubt it. I think we're seeing this price increase as a result of the worldwide supply crunch. Unfortunately, I think we'll probably see more $30 books going forward. The very first chapter of the book includes special terrain rules for forests, mountains, bogs, icy, and urban terrain. All of this seems very fun and satisfying. For example, casting a fireball in a forest might cause forest fires. Casting it on a mountainside might cause an avalanche. You might want these things to happen if you're trying to clear the battlefield with these effects if the game is going very poorly for you. That kind of thing is really fun. It's sort of screw your buddy stuff. If you combine these terrain rules with the arcane terrain rules provided in the last expansion book, Fireheart, you could really come up with some unique and challenging battlefields for your little guys to play on. And these terrain rules could be easily adapted to Frostgrave or Silver Bayonet with some very slight tweaking. So, much like that last expansion, this book could have some additional value if you play those games also. Well, hello, Sailor! The next section of the book deals with water and boats on the map, which is kind of awesome. We get rules for making your little guys putter around on small boats and board and fight from watercraft. I love this. I think it's a great tool for adding new depth, pun intended, to your scenarios. We get a new mechanic for inclement weather, storm and fog and blizzards, wind gusts, all the stuff that can have an effect on battle. We then get a whole new mechanic which adds an entirely new dimension to gameplay, and that is supplies. Since this expansion takes place outside of a city, we now need a way to deal with logistics a little bit. Your wizards need spell components, everyone needs food. Now, it's not as granular as all that, it's just abstracted into something called supply points. But finally, there's an upkeep cost for the entire warband, not just the golems. My biggest complaint with all of the Joseph McCullough games is that the campaign side is always a little shallow. Well, this added some much-needed depth to it. Along with the rules for supplies, we get rules for a way to transport those supplies under the name of cargo transports. These could be golems, carts, pack animals, or anything you can imagine that you could carry extra supplies on for your warband. And you can also put your treasure tokens right on your cargo transports, which means fewer of your warband are out of the fight when securing treasure. And of course, warbands can attack, raid, and destroy cargo transports of your opponents. And rules are provided that will allow you to customize your cargo transports. Maybe you have a witch and you want your cargo transport to be a giant spider. Well, then you can pay extra for your transport to be able to climb and attack. Maybe you want something like Baba Yaga's Cauldron. That's in there too. There's lots of customability, and that's very cool. As with every Frostgrave book, we get new soldier types to interact with the new rules. This book includes rules for the guide, the trapper, and the trophy hunter. All three of these new soldiers can support themselves in the wild, and so they don't tap into your supply points. In combat, the guide is less susceptible to terrain hazards, the trapper can set traps, and the trophy hunter provides extra experience points for killing specific kinds of monsters. I like these soldier types. I think they'd be a real asset if you're going to incorporate the rules of the book into your game. The next section is also pretty standard in these books. We get a mini-campaign which incorporates all of the new rules presented in the book. Not my favorite part. We then get new treasure tables for wilderness areas, including new magic items, and they're all appropriately wilderness themed. This is kind of a standard inclusion for most Frostgrave books. We also get new monsters, including more standard animals like moose, mountain goats, and wolverines, but we also get a new race of good-aligned elkmen who have a crusade against the undead. It's flavorful, and I like that. And then we get the new traits for the new monsters and the new soldiers. They're also quite good. I would call this book a must-buy for Frostgrave players. The terrain rules, the boat rules, the supply system, the cargo transport. It all adds a new dimension to the game, and I find myself excited about Frostgrave for the first time in a while. The highest praise I can give this book is that it brings the game a bit closer to something like Mordheim or Necromunda, and that's my positive review for this product. I'll give you a few seconds to click away if that's all you need. I am going to lay out a few critiques in the next part of the video. If you want to hear me kind of nitpick about gaming today, this is more of a broader critique of sort of Frostgrave and the Joseph McCullough games in general. Again, there's all said with love. I do like this stuff. I really love Silver Bayonet. Is that enough apologetic framing for you? All right, here's some critiques. Survival is something I have quite an interest in. This type of book fascinates me. They're great fuel for post-apocalyptic survival games, but survival can be grim and dark, and yeah, Games Workshop, the master of grim and dark, do handle this kind of stuff much better in their skirmish games. The tone of Frostgrave isn't the same tone as the GW games. It's more in line with modern Dungeons & Dragons, and you can really see that with the treatment of survival and hunger in this supplement, and that the way it's set up, your warband is probably not going to experience hunger, even though there's a mechanic for it. If you load up your warband with the classes presented in this book, you could probably stretch the 50 supply points that your warband can carry for far more games than any campaign will ever realistically run. If you take the cargo transport and load it up, it'll last even longer. The rules as presented here, no one can even really die of starvation, even if you do run out of supplies. They're just weakened. And yeah, there are rules for raiding your opponent's supplies during the battle, but that's the only action your warband can take to acquire more supplies if they run out. That seems really short-sighted. For example, there are animals that can appear in the battle that you can kill, but there's no mechanic for securing their carcasses for food. I would think a starving group would care more about food in the short term than they would about securing more treasure. So if, a moose appears in the battle, someone kills the moose, I would think dragging that off the battlefield would be more important than getting that little bit of extra gold. I think that's what people would do as a compulsion. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, food is going to come first. But that's not in this game. It's not presented in this game. And every monster that can be eaten should have supply point values attached to them, right? There should be a value if you kill it, you can grab it, pull it off the board, and then that becomes your food. Aside from monsters, what about cannibalism? Warbands that summon demons and raise zombies are probably not too pure to eat a fallen comrade or an enemy, right? Not in this game. Not presented. No rules for it. There's no rules for eating your own war beasts. You can come in with war dogs and stuff. If they get killed, do we have some supply points from that? Can somebody eat the dog? Nope, none of that either. And this is the kind of stuff that happens in wilderness campaigns in real life. I mean, explorers are always eating their animals, eating their shoes, eating each other. That's just not a thing here. Not presented in the game. They kind of keep the tone light, all family friendly. Survival is a grim thing, and it's just really Disneyfied in this supplement. Which is weird because the combat in Frostgrave can be very fatal, but the campaign rules never are. Now, you know a little of your history of military campaigns and expeditions. You'll know that most soldiers, they don't die in combat. It's the rigors of roughing it in the wild that really rack up the casualties. Typhus, for example, was a huge killer, I think, in World War I, and maybe even II, and much more than bullets. You just have men eating poor food, sleeping poorly, top of each other, unsanitary conditions, pooping in holes nearby where they sleep. It doesn't take long before they start getting sick and dying. There's a little bit of that in the terrain rules where the ground, again, you can set forest fires and you can have avalanches and stuff. You can trigger these things where, they're not dying in combat. But again, there's nothing like that in the supply point rules. So I almost wonder why even have them. If the biggest penalty for messing up your logistics, running out of food, is that you're a little bit weaker going into a battle. Well, even significantly weaker. I'm not sure anyone would be that motivated to play with it, and there's so few ways to correct it. This is sort of my standard complaint with this game. Everything that doesn't happen on the battlefield is a little bit shallow. The wilderness is a great place to really address that. There's a superficial effort in this book with the supply points, but mostly this book, just like every other Frostgrave expansion, really just builds out the combat rules some more, with more options for soldiers and different kinds of monsters and magic items. But all of the sort of challenges of survival in the wilderness are also represented on the battlefield, which isn't really that satisfying to me. There's already a very solid battle system in this game, and they just keep adding to that, and they don't really address or expand on the campaign side of it, and I find that a little disappointing. One of the things I love about skirmish games that have a campaign system is that it's okay to enter a battle with a severe disadvantage, because of bad luck, because the campaign's going against you. and you have to sort of improvise and make that work, and you have sort of a different goal. That's what real combat is like. Warhammer and games that emulate that model of game that always insist on a parity between the two forces, and that both force size and where they're positioned in battle tactically are the same. That's a little bit more like Magic the Gathering. It takes it away from the sort of realism of an actual war campaign. You know, in most campaign-based games, at some point one side is going to be more powerful than the other. That's the rule. There's sort of a snowballing effect of victory. And it's okay. You might even play a scenario where that more powerful side is set up in a more advantageous way to easily succeed. And that's fine because, you know, again, that's more representative of reality. Rarely do two evenly matched forces meet on the battlefield. That's fighting over and again. That's really clearly somebody gamifying something, right? Then we're getting back to like chess or checkers where we have matching pieces on either side of the board. But historical gamers know that there's a lot of fun to be had playing scenarios where one side's victory condition is to cause as many casualties as possible, or to hold a position for as long as possible, or even just to evacuate an area, because an outright military victory is almost impossible given the asymmetry of the forces involved. Because if you lose this battle, because everything's lined against you, you get another chance. It's a campaign. Try to make the best of this one, and if you have multiple players, you hope that maybe someone else, a third party, will sort of straighten out the guy who just stomped you, or the two of you can gang up on him. I don't know, it's far more interesting to me. There's just so many games about straight-up combat out there. What I really want is a good campaign-based game. I don't know about the current Necromunda. I didn't like the collectability of it, but my classic, my ultimate favorite, is that first edition Necromunda. You know, things like Gorka Morka, Mordheim. I feel like those games really sort of nailed that balance of campaign and battle. And I'm just jonesing for it. I want to see a modern version of it. I've always leveled this complaint at Frostgrave. They're not really hitting the mark. But again, this book comes close, or at least comes closer. These sort of combat games that we have so many of, like 40K, they're just about destruction. You're just blowing up your opponent's vehicles and infantry, and that's the only objective. A real campaign system also lets you build something, fortifying areas and taking parts of a map and industrializing them, you know, turning them into mines and you know, maybe, you know, farmland. And with Frostgrave, you know, you get to build a powerful pair of wizards and a warband, and that includes golems and now cargo transports. But again, there's so much more you could do, and other games have. The Wilderness presents a great opportunity to really bring elements of a greater campaign into the game. Warbands could secure territory. Those territories could have valuable assets on them, like mines, springs, enchanted ruins, cultivated fields. They could set up fortified camps. And I just want more meat on the campaign system. And while this book provides morsels of such, I'd like more.
Please, sir. I want some more.
As always, thanks for watching Miniature Mashup. There's lots of ways to support this channel. Please check out my eBay store. I mean, just check it out. You can always join my Patreon. I think I've managed to change the rates to something far more reasonable, like $1 a month. I don't need much money. I just need some support. I have a GoFundMe. I'm not sure if it's still active. I'll put the link in there anyway. Please check out our Facebook page. Thanks again for watching, guys. I'll see you soon. Bye. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell.